Brazil sets the details ahead of President-elect Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva's inauguration on Sunday, as delegations from 120 countries, including 17 heads of state and government, will attend the historic event. In the United States, the Supreme Court ruled to uphold the off-border restrictions of Title 42 of the U.S. Code. And in Russia, President Vladimir Putin signed Moscow's decree in response to the cap on Russian oil prices imposed by the Western powers. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. In Ecuador, violent crimes increased during Christmas Eve, with 24 murders in the last few weeks. According to local media, most of the femicides or the homicides occur in the city of Guayaquil. The murders follow the end of the state of emergency decreed on December 15th in the provinces of Guayas, Esmeraldas, and Santo Domingo de los Táchilas, a measure adopted after several bomb attacks in those territories in November. Ecuador is also experiencing an escalation of violence, with the homicide rate rising to more than 20 in 100,000 inhabitants this year. In Brazil, delegations from 120 countries, including 17 heads of state and government, will attend the inauguration ceremony of President-elect Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, scheduled for January 1st. The press team of the incoming Brazilian president indicated that the presidential inauguration will bring to the country almost 3 times more high-level foreign delegations than those who came in 2019 to the inauguration of the outgoing Jair Bolsonaro. At least 53 foreign delegations will be made up of heads of state and government, the ministers and ambassadors. The day before, Lula called for peace and tranquility in the country after a terrorist threat by a Bolsonaro supporter who tried to detonate a tanker truck near the international airport of Brasilia. According to the National Institute of Statistics and Census in Argentina, economic activity grew by 4.5% year-on-year during October, although it showed up a drop in the inter-monthly comparison. Let's see in the following report what the experts said on the possibility of sustaining the reactivation of the economy in the South American country for the next year.
For economist Ernesto Matos, it is essential to look at what is happening in the world to analyze the possible scenarios that could occur in Argentina.
The world economy, mainly during the year 2023, is expected to see a rise in interest rates in at least central countries. In this case, the US and Europe. The difference is that the US, in addition to raising its interest rate, has implemented a policy to lower inflation that has to do with the transfer of subsidies. In this case, many of the North American companies linked to the metal, mechanic and steel industries are receiving large amounts of subsidies that tempt European companies to stay in this country.
And in this context, according to the expert, the measures taken in order to face the price increase will play a key role.
We are in a year of high inflation, loss of purchasing power. In the case of commodity prices, that would explain a little of this rise in prices. There is a perspective in which the climatic events, such as drought in areas where there is abundant rain, are complicating the crops. In addition, the areas where there are war conflicts are affecting other regions. It is the case of at least 2021, when Latin American countries such as Brazil and Argentina were one of the main exporters to Africa, given the cut of supply of wheat from Ukraine.
In addition to internal factors, the external ones will continue to have an impact on the pace of the Argentine economy.
Regarding the outlook, we have to take into account that on the one hand, Argentina, like other countries, is very vulnerable to imports in order to grow and produce. In that sense, we are somewhat in the bottleneck regarding the amount of dollars available for that growth. We were able to overcome an important crisis in the middle of the year with the untimely departure of Minister Martín Guzmán, and the reserves were stabilized and increased little by little. The coming year will depend to a great extent on the accumulation of reserves in order to continue this growth process.
Investment and the implementation of more policies, such as fair prices, will be decisive according to economists.
The extension of fair prices for the whole year 2023 is an important measure because it allows, on the one hand, that wages do not continue to shrink at the same rate as inflation. And this also impacts on consumption, a relevant factor of the aggregate demand that represents approximately 70%. Probably what we are witnessing is a lower growth, but with lower inflation. What I understand is that the economic policy is trying not to stop growing, but at the same time to control the inflationary process.
In addition to these situations, there is the electoral setting, since the presidential elections will be held in Argentina in 2023. Carolina Silvestre, TeleSUR, Buenos Aires.
Carolina Silvestre, TeleSUR, Buenos Aires.
Now we move on to other topics. On Tuesday, December 27th, the U.S. Supreme Court decided to uphold the border restrictions of the Title 42 of the U.S. Code. The court ruled in favor of the 19 states that requested the preservation of this policy. The ruling extends a temporary pause in the elimination of the regulations imposed on December the 20th, while the litigation proceeds. Judges cast 5 votes in favor of continuing the measures and 4 against. 42 U.S.C. is a regulation that allows for the expedited removal of undocumented immigrants under health pretexts for the spread of the COVID-19. Trump administration introduced this policy in March 2020. The current Biden administration has also continued with the same measures, through which more than 2 million people have already been deported. Now we address other topics. The number of people killed by the snowstorm that hit the United States rose to 64 on Tuesday, while roads remain blocked and there are obstacles to rescue operations. In the city of Buffalo, New York, authorities reported 28 dead, but believe the figure will continue to rise as the teams advance search missions. A National Weather Service bulletin reported that being outdoors could cause frostbite within minutes. It also warned that strong winds will pose a potentially deadly risk to travelers, outdoor workers, livestock, and pets. Winter in the U.S. officially began last Wednesday, and forecasters have already indicated that 260 million people, about 80% of the population, are expected to see rising temperatures in the country. Let's take a short break, but first, remember you can follow us on our TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, signed Moscow's decree in response to the cap on Russian oil prices imposed by the G7 countries, the European Union, and Australia. Early December, these nations agreed to impose a $60 per barrel cap on the price of Russian oil. The Russian government has repeatedly called the Western initiative an anti-market measure that may significantly complicate the situation on world energy markets. The official document signed on Tuesday states that Russia will not sell oil to countries that have joined the price cap. The decree will enter into force on February 1, 2023, and will remain in force until July 1, 2023. Less than an hour after the publication of the document, oil prices have soared. Thus, Brent crude oil rose to $86 a barrel for the first time since December 5th, according to data from the London Stock Exchange ICE. And Serbs put up more roadblocks in northern Kosovo on Tuesday after the Serbian government put its troops near the border on a high level of combat readiness. The new barriers, made of heavily loaded trucks, were put up overnight in Mitrovica, a northern Kosovo town divided between Kosovo Serbs and ethnic Albanians, who represent the majority population in Kosovo. Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić said he ordered the army's high state of alert to protect the people in Kosovo and preserve Serbia. Serbs started putting up roadblocks 18 days ago to protest the arrest of a former Kosovo Serb police officer. Kosovo remains a potential flashpoint in the Balkans years after the 1998-1999 Kosovo War that ended with a NATO intervention that pushed Serbian troops out of the former Serbian province. And the Spanish government takes action to contain the onslaught of the economic situation in the European region. On Tuesday, the Spanish government announced the implementation of a series of measures aimed at reducing the impact of the economic crisis generated by the COVID-19 pandemic and aggravated by the armed conflict between Russia and Ukraine. In this sense, the suppression of the value-added tax on basic foodstuffs, the extension of rent and eviction controls, free and discounted transport services, as well as the reduction of the tax on electricity and the issuance of a new check of €2,000 for people earning less than €27,000 per year, among other actions, were ordered. The president of the government, Pedro Sánchez, also pointed out that the main objective of these measures was to protect the middle and working classes from the rising cost of living. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The Chinese government declared on Tuesday its concern about the increase in the defense budget of some $51,270 million in the Japanese nation. During a press conference, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin specified that Tokyo exaggerates regional tensions to achieve progress in its military power. The Foreign Ministry also described the actions of Japan as a dangerous trend, which forces countries of the international community to question whether Tokyo continues its peaceful development. Likewise, the Chinese spokesperson reiterated Beijing's commitment to the peaceful path, while calling the Japanese nation to reflect on its history of being cautious with its words and actions in the military field.
We have noticed relevant reports and expressed concern over the apparent and substantial increase in Japan's defense budget. The Japanese side exaggerates the tension in the region in order to seek a breakthrough in its own military power. This is a dangerous move that has forced its Asian neighbors and the international community to strongly question whether Japan is sincerely committed to defense and adheres to the path of peaceful development. The Japanese side should seriously reflect on its history of aggression and be cautious in its words and deeds in the field of military security, so as not to further lose its credit among its Asian neighbors and in the international community.
Palestinian authorities denounced on Tuesday that the Israeli occupation forces have killed more than 220 Palestinians during 2022. Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Stayeh pointed out that almost 10,000 Palestinians have been injured by the Israeli army. The official also denounced that Tel Aviv indiscriminately imposed house arrest on almost 600 Palestinian children and adolescents. The Palestinian premier warned that the situation this country is going through is a political battle and that the majority of the countries in the world support the cause of the Palestinian people. Despite Western coercive measures and severe damage to health facilities terrorist war has caused, Syria has shown remarkable progress in the recovery of its health sector during the current year. The expansion of the opening of hospitals, health centers, and pharmaceutical plants is proof of that. Let's see.
Syrian health authorities offer free medical care to all the country's citizens without exception. The blockade causes limitations. However, they continue to do so in the many rehabilitated and rebuilt health facilities with the resources and with the support of friendly countries. One example of that is the opening of the Harasta hospital in Damascus countryside this year. It has 90 beds and the setting of the first stem cell transplant center in the country.
Despite the difficult circumstances of war and blockade that prevent us from importing the necessary medicines, equipment, and medical supplies, we have managed to build an equipped center and other health centers in the country. So we can consider this achievement as a resilient answer and a true miracle.
In parallel, 4 national vaccination campaigns against COVID-19 and numerous immunization days against cholera, polio, and other contagious diseases took place in 2022. Syrian authorities have had to face a lack of medicines, equipment, and medical supplies due to the blockade. They have not been alone, however, since they have received medical assistance from Russia, China, Cuba, and other friendly countries. They have also reactivated the national pharmaceutical plans, which this year covered 90% of a country's medical needs.
The sanctions affect all sectors, the health sector included. Due to the blockade, we are facing great difficulties in securing the necessary resources to fight coronavirus. That is why we demand the immediate elimination of this humane blockade, so that we can fulfill our mission in confronting coronavirus and other diseases. The pandemic also affects young people. That is why I came to get immunized, since I consider that all the youth must get the vaccine because they are the most productive sector and their health and work are both essential for the development of the country.
Thousands of civilians and military personnel, crippled as a result of the terrorist war imposed on Syria, were able to recover their physical and kinetic abilities thanks to the free medical and physiological care they received at state-owned and civil society prosthetic centers. Meanwhile, the national campaign for the early detection of breast, cervical, and prostate cancers continues in the country. Despite the difficult war and blockade situations, the Syrian authorities promised to continue this work in 2023 to guarantee public health.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.